listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
And welcome to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Dave Ross alongside Geoff Schwartz here on this Tuesday edition. Hopefully everybody had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. And Geoff, when you have this Tuesday, the holiday has come and gone. OTAs, baby. Everybody is getting back to work. So let's begin the show today with our off-season updates presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. Geoff, tell the people what it is like now. You're coming off your, your break here as a player, and then you start these OTAs this week. What are you doing at those OTAs?
Okay, so it's funny how the language they use to describe what's happening, because you've had practices essentially, or you've been in the building for 5 weeks now. Like, this is not you don't just show up today. It's like, hey, welcome everyone. Hi, I'm here. Now, certainly some players might, because it technically, Dave, as we know, is voluntary. It's mandatory. Guys should be there. So you've been doing classroom work. You've done some walkthroughs, and you've been in the weight room. And this is the first week where you sort of put it all together, right? Where you're allowed to be on the field for full team practice. Now, these practices are not supposed to be physical, right? There are cameras in this guy. The NFLPA does review this, and they will find some teams that are not in compliance, and they will take away OTA practices from them. So it's supposed to be sort of a non-physical practice, which is hard to do, especially for guys inside. And it's just a way to familiarize yourself with the playbook again, with the terminology. We're just doing some football movements, right? You've done a lot of stuff in the weight room or in individual drills, or with you're trying outside to put it all together on the field, to feel certain things. And it's great for young players, right? To be able to see the speed of a practice, to learn the practice rhythm. For the older guys, it's just about fine-tuning their craft, right? Getting on the field and feeling what it feels like to be back playing football. And again, these are not physical practices, right? They're a lot about passing and throwing and things like that. But it just feels good to get a sweat in, to get back on the field and feel yourself playing some ball again. So I know the guys are looking forward to it. Again, it's the offseason program is good because it's a way for players to practice their craft without the stress of being cut. Well, the stress of the training camp, right? Young players are worried about being cut. Older players are just sort of getting ready for the season at hand, right? They might not be getting ready exactly for that practice. So this is just a really good way to start evaluating players on the field. Lastly, for younger players, right? I say this all the time. I think it's so true. It's just your first opportunity. If you're a 7th round pick, like I was, undrafted free agent, to start making those plays where the coaches go, "Oh, who's that? Wait, rewind that. What number is that?" Because you're not going to get a lot of opportunities, and you want to see these young guys immediately show themselves. Look, it's pretty easy to tell early on who's good, who's bad, I think, of the young guys. Yeah. And the guys that stand out start getting more reps. So young guys, man, it's a big couple of weeks for those guys.
Yeah, 20 clubs out there for those organized team activities. That's what OTA stands for. 5 more. We'll do it tomorrow on a Wednesday. Geoff, I'm going to show my age here, but I remember my conversations with, one of the boss hogs back in the day for the old Hogs line for the Washington Redskins, Jeff Bostic. And Bosco used to tell me from an offensive line perspective back then, they used to have 2 days back then. And it was very different the way the off seasons were. They used the OTAs and training camp as a way to get into shape, and even the preseason games to a degree, and then to get ready for week 1. And that day is gone, right? To your point about coming to the OTAs, now when you get there, it is more of a 365, and you're coming to those OTAs and then training camp, and you're already in shape. Is that the biggest difference from 30, 40 years ago to modern day football?
It's a big difference, right? And even look, even when I got in the NFL, 2008. So really, that was my rookie year. 2009 was my second year, right? Now this is pre-CBA 2011, right? Was the new CBA that sort of changed the way the players practice and prepare and all those things. Because the time limits were constrained after that CBA. So you showed up about March 15th. I mean, your season ended January 1st. Let's just say about the new year. You played a playoff game or two. I mean, the Carolina Panthers in 2008, we went into the divisional round, right? So you end mid-January. You show up 2 months later. You didn't put much work. You need a month to rest your body after the season. Most guys take off 3 to 4 weeks. Then you ease yourself back into it. You show up March 15th, and you're not expected to be in shape. They work you back into shape. Even the strength coach will tell you, like, hey, man, we just just show up basically, right? Like do some things for a month or so, not heavy lifting, not heavy running. You show up in the first day, we had a bunch of running to do, right? A bunch of lifting to do and heavy, low weight, heavy reps, right? And so then 2011 happens. They move the offseason program start date from March 15th to about April 20th. And you get that extra month or 5 weeks, man, that's used to get in shape now. So guys show up in shape, and the offseason program is not for getting in shape, really. In fact, the offseason program for the weight room is often less than you do at your facility that you spend your spring and summers in. It's just I look at it as a maintaining, right? You maintain to get to your summer workout schedule or to maintain off of what you did in spring with your own trainer. So correct. It's not used to get in shape. If you show up out of shape, it's so noticeable because everyone else is in shape right now. Of course, there's a difference between football shape and the shape of your body, which often round, by the way, is a shape, FYI. So you could be, round's okay. Is a shape, not the best shape, but round is a shape. So you want to be able to hit the ground running. But look, your first OTA today, if you're on the field for the first time since January in a practice capacity, you're gonna get tired. That's okay. But in shape also, last time with this day, means you don't get hurt, right? You don't pull muscles, right? You're physically able to conduct a practice, even though you might get winded or your body part might get tired here and there, but you don't get hurt, right? So, yes, guys come in now much better because you have to. You don't have as much. You don't do as much in the facility. You have more time to prepare outside of the facility.
Yeah, absolutely. Round is a shape. And by the way, later on in the program, I want to get your thoughts on a new award they've announced, the Protector of the Year. We'll get to that at the end of the program. Nobody would know that award better than you and what should entail the criteria for said award, which is a new one in the NFL. But speaking of shape, JaVontae Williams says he is back into being in the best shape he's been since coming into the league at UNC to Denver. And then he didn't just tear up his knee. He tore up every bit of his knee, the ACL, the PCL, the LCL. If he had an L, it was torn up, Geoff. So it's been since 2022. And now the Cowboys are going to hope that he's in that good shape, not just physically, but also mentally, to maybe be a boon for the Cowboys this year. I know they drafted Jadon Blue out of Texas as well for the running back position, but what do you make of that? Because normally they say it is the year after you have the surgery. So it's been a good year and a half for JaVontae. Can the Cowboys expect him to look like he looked early on in his career?
Oh, yeah, right to the Cowboys, Dave. I knew it. We get right there as soon as possible, right? This is the funny thing about this is, okay, so I don't know if you get ever like metrics on what people read or listen to, and one of my jobs, I get to see those every now and then. Yeah, Cowboys, man, they're number one all the time. Like people like why talk about the Cowboys? Because you guys listen. It's your fault if you didn't listen and watch and consume Cowboys content. We wouldn't talk about the Cowboys. So look, it's very clear that injury progression and your rehab can be different for every player. But a lot of times when you're rehabbing injury, when you sort of feel 100% is when training camp starts. But you've spent that offseason, instead of we just talked about training, right? Like at 100% for your craft. You're just training to get back to 100%. And then your season comes and immediately you're not 100% anymore, right? And so the next offseason, you're able to train yourself at 100%. And so you come into training camp or the offseason program, just in much better shape, right? You're not training to get to 100%. You start at 100%. And that's a big difference. That's why guys, and your point and everyone else's point, year 2 after an injury, you don't spend that next offseason in rehab. You spend it training 100%. You feel much better. So yeah, look, the Cowboys should get a lot out of him. I still think the Cowboys letting Dowdle go was a mistake. I think Dowdle is one of the most underrated signings we saw. We'll talk about in a little bit teams we thought improved and did not. And one of the teams that got him, I thought improved a lot this offseason. I think he had 1,000 yards last season.
Yeah, he did.
Like Panthers got like $3 million. So look, can Williams be that guy? I don't know, but obviously having depth at that position is so important because as we know each and every year, that's an injured position, right? It's unfortunate, but having guys that can run the football, many different guys, can be really impactful for your team. And the Cowboys, I think, clearly want to get back to sort of what they were, I think, early Dak Prescott days, run the football, play action pass, and just sort of protect, and this is the wrong way to say it, but just protect Dak Prescott, right? Like find a way to make a system that doesn't really revolve all about his arm. Get back to run the football, protect the football, play action pass, things like that, which is it's what the Cowboys were. They're the best offensive line in the NFL. Two Hall of Famers and really 2.5 Hall of Famers on that offensive line. They don't have that now, but that's where you saw Dak have a lot of success. So, getting back to that, I think, is important for them.
Yeah, they're going to try. They're going to hope that JaVontae Williams is the Rico Dowdle who's now down there in Carolina. We'll get to that later on in the program, as you mentioned, but that's what they're banking on with Blue, the rookie out of Texas. Speaking of former Cowboys, Brandon Cooks is a former Cowboy. He's now down in New Orleans. And, Geoff, is interesting because when you bring in a veteran wide receiver with Kellen Moore, by the way, first-year head coach, again, former Cowboy offensive coordinator, you got a three-headed monster now at quarterback, which is Tyler Shuck, the rookie coming out this year, Spencer Rattler, who was there already with Jake Haener. So Brandon Cooks says that it really is a three-way competition and that they really should be able to evaluate their play. When you hear that from Brandon Cooks, how much input, if at all, will the coaching staff take from a veteran receiver as to which quarterback he likes?
Ooh. I don't know, man. I think a lot of times it's approached in this way where we'll listen to you, which I think is what they should do. Listen to the players, but don't do what the players say. I mean, we have spouses, right? Like they listen to us, we listen to them, and we end up doing what we want anyways. Like, I think that's like, you just want to feel heard, right? You want to feel heard. I want to feel heard, right? I give my wife advice. She does whatever she wants anyways, but she heard my advice though, right? It's all that matters to me. I gave you my advice. So I think this is what they do, right? Like you spend all this time evaluating the quarterbacks in the meeting room, on the field, and you should listen to your veteran guys. And maybe they're right. And but usually if a bunch of them say the same thing, you should listen to them, right? If they're mixed, then you probably don't. But I don't know how much they actually listen to us, but they hear us, which is, I think, is important. You want to feel heard, right? You want to feel that the team is listening to your advice, even if they don't make the decision that you want in the end.
All right, let's see if Kellen Moore is listening to what Brandon Cooks has to say. So far, it sounds like a true three-way battle. All right, Geoff, you mentioned it. When we come back, let's talk about teams that got better in this offseason. That is next here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Dave Ross alongside Geoff Schwartz here on this Tuesday edition post-holiday. And, Geoff, we're going to take some time here in this show in particular, and as the summer months go here, really breaking down teams that we think got better and or worse in the offseason from a year ago. So a lot of that is encapsulated certainly by the draft, but also by free agency, and or it could be just the makeup of your coaching staff in general. Did you get better in the offseason? I think one team you and I identify that, at least on paper, feels like they got better is the Chicago Bears. So obviously the big change there is Ben Johnson coming in for the fired Matt Eberflus. You get year number 2 of Caleb Williams, the former number 1 pick in the draft just a year ago. I'm curious what you think. I like what they did in the offseason, get a lot of linemen to try to fortify that O-line, to go with the skill players they already had. How good can this Bears team be? And we're seeing the win total set at 8.5, juiced evenly about $1.10 either way. But, Geoff, that shows me that the books are saying, man, you think they're going to be a better than 500? You're going to play the over? And if you think they're going to be under 500, you bet the under.
Look, it's obviously a tough division, so that will dictate, I think, the win total and sort of where, if the Vikings are what they were last year, the Lions, I should say, the Packers. So I don't know about the win total quite. I haven't dug into all those quite yet, but I think that we're in strong agreement the Bears got better. And two things here quickly. So when a new coach and general manager take over now, in this situation, it's just a head coach, right? It's just Ben Johnson. He's not tied to Caleb Williams, right? Now, obviously, Ryan Poles, the general manager, is. A lot of times when those guys come in, the new guys, especially this be the case in Jacksonville for sure, new GM and new head coach, they're not tied to the quarterback, right? And year one is about finding out if the quarterback that you have, and it could be anybody, is your franchise guy or not. Because, look, if Caleb Williams is not their guy, Ben Johnson will go to Ryan Poles and say, I need someone else. And Ryan Poles will have to say, I made a bad draft pick. We'll find someone else. So you have to think about what the Bears did. It's also along those lines of, we're trying to find and get players in the building to help out Caleb Williams. And that's what they did. I think they did a great job of this. So they talk about being better. Yeah, they're better now. They went and got a center. They went and got 2 guards, okay? Look, we can't even evaluate our quarterback. We can't protect our quarterback. So first and foremost, let's protect our quarterback. So they did a great job of getting those guys in place. Let's protect our quarterback. Let's add some players in the wide receiving room to go just give us depth, right? They're not, the Zacchaeus is not the best wide receiver ever, but let's get some depth here, right? Let's get some more pieces in place. What if guys get hurt? We don't want to have a situation where we're out of wide receivers. They went and got Loveland in the draft to add a pass-catching tight end. They got Luther Burden. Like all the moves they did, the top of free agency, I'll include the trades in free agency essentially, right? And top of the draft, Caleb Williams. Let's help out Caleb Williams. So I love what they did because your job this year is to win games, absolutely. But it's to make sure Caleb Williams ends the season better than he started. The only chance you have to evaluate him correctly and properly is to give him the pieces. Because if Caleb Williams struggles this season, that's on him. They've given all the pieces. And we know Ben Johnson can coach offense. We saw him do it with Jared Goff. He turned Jared Goff into like an MVP candidate, which like outside of 1 year in Los Angeles, he wasn't really. So I like what they did on that side. They added some pieces on defense, which wasn't a really problem for them last season. So Dave, I like what they did offensively, right? We're gonna put pieces in place to properly evaluate Caleb Williams.
I could not agree more. Every move they made, it's seemingly, especially with the upfront guys, that offensive line, you mentioned the depth at wide receiver to go with the guys like Aroma Dunze they drafted last year with Caleb Williams. You feel like maybe you upgraded the running back position. I mean, it feels like everything they did was for Caleb Williams this year. So really in year 2, not that you're going to be thrown out if you don't work out in year 2, but it should be a growth year, certainly for Caleb. When I look at the Giants, a 3-win team a year ago, and you look at the front office and then you look at the head coach, this could be last chance to dance for those guys too. So Brian Daboll knows that, right? You basically bring in a whole new quarterback room, at least at the top 2, with Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston to play. You would think as the lead dog is going to be Russ, you would think Jameis is going to be the backup role. That's the way at least the pay structure looks so far. Is that enough for you to say that this team is an upgrade over what we saw a year ago?
It's an upgrade offensively, right? Because if you look at their team, their defense last year was fine. I mean, they just weren't, Abdul Carter obviously happy, being on their roster is good who they drafted, but I think just offensively, they got better this year, which they needed to do, especially at quarterback position. That makes a huge difference, obviously, in the success of your team. And you're right, they're up against it, right? This is it. If they can't win this year, they are not there next season. But what's interesting about the Giants is all these additions are to what we said, great, right? You've gotten better this year, but your schedule is so tough that it might not matter. It might not matter you've gotten better, which is a bad place to be in. But their schedule is really that difficult to where it might not matter, which is crazy to say. But I think they did it. I think they did the best job possible in making this roster better with the resources that they had at hand.
5.5 is that win total. I think this team could be better, to your point, Geoff, and it does not manifest itself in wins. Like a team that's close in a lot of games, but can't figure out a way to get over the hump. I could see a lot of that for the Giants this year, but I do think they're better. Is it good enough to save those jobs, those high-profile jobs in New York? We'll find out. That's what I'm not sure about.
The last thing that's interesting about the Giants quickly is that they brought in Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, right? And I think that they brought them in smartly. At the time, they did not have an option for quarterback, right? Their option was what's his name? The Italian DeVito, right? He's not, fun story, not a good quarterback. I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's life, right? And so they had to bring in those guys. I think if you had told them they were drafting Jackson Dart, they would have not signed Russell Wilson. I think they would have just gone with Jameis as a backup and just had Dart start immediately, even though he does, as everyone says, sort of need some work to polish up a little bit. The story's coming out of New York. I just think they're going to have Dart start sooner or later, which would probably help keep jobs, I think. But that also changes the win total, right? And the project, if Dart is good, which I think, 50-50 rookie year, like, I don't know what even good means. He's not going to be Jane Daniels. But that sort of changes, I think, what this team can be. To me, Russell Wilson is what he is at this point in his career. You're not getting much from him other than, you get better quarterback playing what you had last season. So, Dart playing early in his career would change the way I think we feel about the Giants season. It probably is a worse season early with him. And if he gets better, then you end the season feeling good about that position.
Yeah, 5.5 is that win total. It is juiced to the under, by the way, because of that tough schedule, Geoff, that you talked about. It really is brutal on paper. I want to get to the team down there in your neck of the woods, Carolina Panthers here. This was a 5-win team a year ago, and yet they're projected to have 6.5 wins is where that win total is sit. And it's juiced to the over, minus $1.25. So at least people are expecting this to be at least a 7-win team. Dave Canales, year number 2. And all of a sudden you look up and the former number 1 pick in the draft, Bryce Young, going into year number 3. You mentioned Rico Dowdle coming over from Dallas this year to help fortify that backfield position. What do you make of the Panthers this year? Can we expect them to be marginally better this year?
I think you have to like what they did, right? If you were to say, okay, kind of identify your weaknesses and go attack them, that's what their offseason was, right? Okay, we need to get better on defense. Well, we brought in Warren from Kansas City. We brought in a safety, we brought in a linebacker, brought in another defensive tackle. You look at just sort of, okay, the offense last year has some good pieces. We can build on those guys. Let's bring in Dowdle, right? We drafted McMillan to be number 1 alongside Thielen and Legay, who they drafted last year. So I just like that they got better position they needed. They drafted obviously 2 defensive pass rushers, which they need pass rush. Derek Brown, by the way, back in the lineup this year after being hurt. And I was pulling up their schedules as we talk right now. Right. So the first half of the season was not good. Now remember, Bryce Young started, got benched after week 2. They won the first game with Dalton, then didn't go very well. And Bryce Young was put back in the lineup. They beat New Orleans by 1. They beat the Giants by a week. They lost to Kansas City by 3. Lost to Tampa Bay by 3 in overtime. Lost the Eagles by 6. But if you remember, they dropped a pass there. Could have won that game. So you just played 3 teams, 2 of them in the Super Bowl, that you were tied with or winning late in the fourth quarter. And that's going to help them this season. They won 4 of their last 5 games, 4 of the last 9 games. They finished 4-5 down the stretch. Bryce Young clearly looked better. So that confidence of how they played down the stretch with the additions they have, I think it's going to help them. I like their front office. I like their coaching staff. You have to be happy with the boy Bryce Young improved the back half of the season. So I'm really high on the Panthers. They're the one sort of team I think we could see, they won the NFC South. That could be possible, I think, for the Panthers.
Wow, look at their division odds, by the way, only 4-1, which you might go, wow, that shows respect in the betting place, in the marketplace, that maybe they could be a surprise in the South this year. Very quickly, you mentioned that benching by Bryce Young early in the year last year, and they go to the Red Rifle. He gets a win for him there. And then eventually, and I remember one of those people going, what is Dave Canales doing? Remember, he inherited Bryce Young too. Like we're talking about this with Ben Johnson in Chicago. Yeah. Was that benching good for Bryce Young, that he and Canales could see it the same way? And sometimes you do have to watch it from the sideline for a couple of weeks to get what Canales is trying to implement, because it does look like whatever that was, it took later on in the year. It started to actually make sense to Bryce Young.
Yeah, I gotta say, I'm pretty surprised that Bryce Young got the job back. When this happened, I thought this was the end of Bryce Young in Carolina. As I mentioned earlier, right? New coach, new GM. They have no emotional ties to Bryce Young. And then he got the job back when Dalton didn't play as well. Plus, remember, Dalton hurt his wrist in that car accident, and he was able to get the job back. And everyone you talked to with the team just said, that time was good for him. It was his first time in his life where, he lost his job, and he just think about why that is, and how do I get better? How do I improve? And sometimes just taking a mental step back from the job helps you, and it really helped him. He came back. He was good, like legitimately played some much better football. I think too, Canales figured out an offense that worked for him early in the season. The offense just wasn't functioning very well in the first 2 weeks. It looked better with Dalton. I think that he just figured out, okay, let's tailor the offense more to what Bryce Young can and can't do. And I was very impressed. He did a good job in the season. I think you hope, year 3 now, you get a better start to the season. You feel good about where you are.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I see it the same way, that if this does not work out for Bryce Young this year, then maybe they really are moving on.
No problem, yeah.
It does feel like they've turned a corner there with Bryce at quarterback. Let's see if that gets off to a good foot here in 2025. When we come back, conversely, what goes up must come down. How about some teams that maybe got worse in the offseason? That is next here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross alongside Geoff Schwartz here on a Tuesday edition of the GM Shuffle. And Geoff, we talked about it in the last segment, teams that we feel have gotten better in the offseason. It might not always manifest itself in true wins and losses, but at least on paper, we can see what the team, the organizations are trying to do. Conversely, let's talk about some teams that may be a small step back. Now, I know it's hard to go San Francisco. How could they get worse? They were 6-11 a year ago. And it's not so much based on last year's team. It's what we think of this team in totality. And that is they're the betting favorite again to win the NFC West. And Geoff, I don't know if that should be the case necessarily. Look, you pay the guys you got to pay. You give the big money to Brock Purdy. You give the big money to George Kittle at tight end. But outside of that, I get the feeling, you tell me if you agree or disagree, that they're getting the group back together one more time, minus Deebo Samuel, who they shipped away to DC, and he's a big part of their attitude. You're hoping that you're going to be healthy on the offensive line. And, you got to hope Trent Williams, who I covered in DC, that's how long ago that was, is still going to be the Trent Williams of old. I just feel like it's an aging roster outside of the quarterback position. CMC gets broken down a lot these days. I don't know if I can trust this team at 10.5 wins to blindly play the over and just assume they go back to the way they were before all the injuries from a year ago.
Well, that win total is set there because their schedule is a joke. They're going to be favored in 15, maybe 16 games in that out of 17. Look, the Niners issue is they are a very top-heavy team, right? They're a team that has the highest paid left. They're not the highest paid anymore, I guess, but maybe the best left tackle. They paid for now a quarterback, a running back, a tight end, a middle linebacker, wide receiver, a defensive end. It's a very top-heavy team, and the reason for that is that they haven't drafted terribly well. They lost, they lost a couple draft picks in the Trey Lance deal, but you look at the drafts, and last year was better. The year before that, they got a starting safety. It was fine. They drafted a kicker, and they drafted players that aren't really playing in rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. The year before that, Drake Jackson, defensive end. I don't know. 23 games. I mean, 6 sacks in his career. Is that what you draft in the second round? It's just, Purdy was a great hit, obviously, but that's more luck than anything else. 2021, Trey Lance, not on your team anymore. Aaron Banks, not on your team anymore. Trey Sermon. Is that worked out well in the third round?
No.
It's just, look, now they had Lenore, but they got Hufungo's not there anymore. Jalen Moore, tackle, not there anymore. So it's just a team that doesn't have a lot of depth. So injuries really affect them maybe more other teams, right? If you lose a guy here and there, who's filling that up? Who are the young guys ready to take those spots? So that's my biggest concern with the Niners. I just don't know if they can withstand any injuries at any time. They don't have depth like that. So they're very well coached. We know they have an offensive scheme that works all the time. They should be able to rush the passer again. Fred Warner is incredible. I mean, they have good football players. They have enough of them all over the roster is my biggest concern.
That's as well said as I could ever summarize why I think this team might be fool's gold. Hey, if everything stays and everybody's healthy for a 17-week season, they're going to be able to patch it together because they do have stars. But you get 1 or 2 hits, as every team seems to get at some point, the erosion of the lack of depth of this football team, I think they're going to be in big trouble. Not only to cash that win total with an easy schedule, but also to stay afloat in that NFC West, which I think might be getting better with Arizona. We'll find out what Seattle looks like in flux a little bit, year 2 of their coaching staff. But the Rams, I think we all think are our team that is going to have to be reckoned with. So I see it the same way. You better hope everybody stays healthy, because if they don't, the cupboard might be bare past the big money tickets that they've given out to a lot of those guys. It's dangerous to fade the Steelers and Mike Tomlin, because as we all know, he's never had a losing record in the history of his tenure, which is amazing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. 10 wins a year ago. They always seem to be a playoff team, even though they don't make runs in the postseason in recent years. Now that win total is sitting at 8.5, it is juiced to the under, Geoff, at minus $1.30. And I guess the number one question mark is, who's going to play quarterback? Like, I don't know how you bet this win total before you know who the quarterback's going to be. And for that reason, doesn't it feel like they've just taken a step back in the offseason to say, I don't know that I can just blindly trust Tomlin like I have in years past?
Well, here's my problem with Pittsburgh. I'm not sure this applies to whether or not they're good this year or not, is they have not taken the necessary risk to be better at quarterback. And that matters a lot in the National Football League, right? Because two things have to happen. You either have to be bad and draft in the top of the first round, or you have to go get up in the top of the first round. Like in Aaron Rodgers, I think doesn't solve any of those. Aaron Rodgers, to me, at best, 10 games. I mean, in that division, maybe 10 games. And like, then you're in the same point next season where you're drafting 17 to 21 and 22, and you're just like stuck in neutral, which they seem to always be in. So from that perspective, like they didn't get much better. They're I think we all agree. Best case scenario, 10-7 with Aaron Rodgers. Worst case, 7. I mean, like you're just in the same spot every single season. And they got you either getting better or worse. You're not staying in the middle. And to me, they're just either worse, or maybe if you want to argue they're in the middle, sure. Defense getting older, as we know. And again, quarterback position. What are you doing? If Rodgers says no, what are you doing at quarterback? And Dave, I look, Tomlin obviously has earned the benefit of the doubt here. I think under last season, clearly did not. But the division is tough, as we know. The Browns will be better this year, I think. The Ravens are good, we know. The Bengals are good, as we know. And it just feels like an uphill battle to get back to 500, especially with your quarterback right now being nobody.
And that is kind of, baked in the cake that the books are anticipating Rodgers will be the quarterback, and that number still sits at 8.5. If he doesn't come back, you have Mason Rudolph, who's, capable backup. Good luck cashing those tickets. As my buddy Brian McFadden, 2-time Super Bowl champion for the Pittsburgh Steelers, would say to me all the time, did you get better today or did you get worse? Because there's only two options, right? And I think you're right. On paper, it does not look like the Steelers have gotten better so far in this offseason. No. You're going to need a really good crop of rookies this year, certainly running the football now as well, for the Steelers to take pressure off whoever the quarterback is. How did the Saints get better? 5-12 a year ago. Derek Carr not only is not walking through that door, he's not going to play football anymore, at least now with that shoulder injury. So now, as we talked about off the top, you've got a three-headed monster at quarterback. I don't know if any of those kids are ready to play. You got second-year guys and a rookie in Tyler Shuck. You got a first-year head coach in Kellen Moore. Whatever you think about Kellen as a coordinator, but he's never done this before. It feels like a lot of ifs here for a 5-win team from a year ago. Can you make any case that they've gotten better? I mean, they're different, but I don't know that they're better.
They're not. They get sort of gradually worse each season as they tell us that they know how to manage a camp better than anyone else, right? I mean, it's, again, like they're a team that look a little bit like the Niners. Like, who I'm gonna look at their roster just to make sure. I know. Look, here's what happens, right? If I say something like an absolute, like, I think they don't have any young guys that are good. Someone will be like, "Oh, there's one guy, he Schwartz, he's good," and it'll be like a corner I don't know about. But the same sort of thing about the Niners, like some top end guys. We know obviously Cam Jordan's really good, but like, where's the young Olave's good, as we know, right? Olave's good. Shaheed seems good. Okay, Eric McCoy, center's good. Ruiz is good. Okay, so that's Kamara. Is Kamara still good? Is he still going to be a top? Okay. We know obviously that Cam Jordan can still play. Brian Brazier is fine, right? I don't know if he's as impactful as you would have liked him to be as a young player, but he's still young. He's got plenty of time to be that impactful player. Oh, and then it's just like DeMario Davis is good, but it's not elite, right? I think we don't agree he's elite. It's just, again, it's sort of a roster when you look and you're like, some good guys, some depth, not a lot of guys you label game wreckers and guys you have to prepare an entire game plan for. It's funny. They got Cam Jordan listed as a backup. That's very funny. He's now in the depth chart. He's not a backup, everyone. I'll let you guys know that. So, like, Justin Reed comes over there. They're just like fine. But the quarterback makes a big difference. And quarterback right now, I think, is Tyler Shuck's job to lose. And I don't feel great about that. I like Calvin Banks, who they drafted, but immediately play him at left tackle, sure. So sort of the same thing about the Niners. Like, some top end guys, but not a lot of depth, not a lot of guys. If someone gets hurt or two, you're just kind of screwed.
Well, they're playing a last place schedule, so you go, well, that should benefit them. But some of those last place teams from a year ago, like the Patriots, we expect to be a lot better. So maybe that schedule might be a bit deceiving. I don't know how in the world it's juiced heavily to the under 6.5. I don't see how I can go, yeah, that's a 7-win football team on paper. I don't see any scenario.
I don't see,
right?
I don't see there's
the Jets and the Titans and some of the out of division stuff, but you better win 3 games in the division, and then you still have to win 4 more out of it. And I don't know that we can book them for 3 games. I think everybody else in the division, including Carolina, looks at this schedule, Geoff, and goes, "Ooh, there's 2 wins for us." Like if you're the Falcons, if you're the Buccaneers, you're booking those as wins. And if you're the Panthers, you might say at worst we split. So I look at this as a dead under team. And Geoff, the other thing is, and pros don't tank, we know that. But if they really struggle, and Arch Manning comes out next year, they're going to be beating that drum all year to have the worst record in the league so they can get Arch Manning at least be in the pole position if he left Texas.
So on DraftKings, fewest regular season wins. All right. It's a fun little way to play some of these numbers, right? Browns plus 400, Saints 425, Giants 600, Jets 800. I'd be really tempted to play Saints and Giants. We talked about both those teams. I know the Giants roster is better. I get that. I agree with you there. Schedule's really, really tough. And if they play Jackson Dart early, I don't feel great about their chances to be anything more than a 3 or 4 win team. So look, if we think the Saints are as bad as they can be, plus 425, I think is a pretty good wager.
Yeah, I don't hate that play at all. I hate to say that for Saints fans here, but it really might be one of those quarterbacks not ready to play in this league, and maybe they're actually looking at a quarterback that's not currently on the roster.
Yeah.
2026. Geoff, when we come back, right up your alley and something you can speak to, a new award in the NFL, the Protector of the Year. We'll discuss next here on the GM Show.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We are back on the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings. Dave Ross alongside Geoff Schwartz here on a Tuesday. And Geoff, this is interesting to me. I didn't see this coming. We have a new award that will be displayed this year. And again, a lot of these awards markets, you can actually wager on these awards markets if you are so inclined. I'll be interested to see what this looks like. It's the Protector of the Year award for the best offensive lineman. So this is a new one. First of all, are you glad that the NFL is starting to realize, hey, what about those big nasties up front? We need to have an award just for those guys for all the work that never gets noticed by the media writ large.
This feels like a long time coming. I will say that one thing that our community has done really well as offensive linemen is sort of build up the recognition for our position. And that starts with he's my best friend. I'll give him a shout out, with Duke Manyweather and then Lane Johnson have done with O-line Masterminds, right? The seminar that we have, their 8th year this summer in Dallas, where we all come together. They had the D-line summit, right? As we know, with the pass rush with Von Miller, tight end U, but we've been doing this now our 8th season. It's super important. I think the job that those guys have done to raise awareness to the position has certainly helped. I do think that as much as I have argued with PFF over the years about their grades, having actual grades, right, for offensive linemen is very helpful, right? It used to just be like sacks allowed or team rushing yards. Well, having a grade assigned to a player, whether I agree or don't agree to it, brings more attention to our position. It's a great thing, right? I think also, too, with right tackles now being as important as left tackles with all the passing, it sort of raised awareness to more positions are important on the offensive line. So I think we've been building toward the point now of having this award. And so I love that we're going to shine light on offensive linemen. Now, I have some criticisms of this award, okay? I think it's fair to talk about both sides. One is that I think it's hard to choose one offensive lineman to win the award. You look at different positions and what their jobs are, right? I mean, Creed Humphrey at center can have the best season, but a tackle probably more impactful, right? As a player for an offensive line. An award position, we do this in college football. I'm very proud to be part of the Joe Moore Award, where we award basically the entire offensive line, a unit at the end of the season, that feels very appropriate, right? We work 5 together as one, and giving this to one guy might be very hard. And I do worry about the amount of film and effort it takes to do this. Are guys just going to basically look at PFF again and look at the grades? And, I look at the panel, I look, it's a very distinguished panel of players, but former players, but are they putting in all the time to watch the film? Because look, this award will be scrutinized. It's brand new. We got to get the right guy to win the award, in my opinion. Some of that criteria, I don't really agree with. That'll be based on how I don't know what helmet contact means. Sacks allowed. I mean, you can allow a sack 7 seconds into a play. It's not really your fault. So I hope that, the panel gets this right. I would have liked to see Duke Manyweather included in this as well, who is the preeminent offensive line trainer in the world right now. But look, it's nice to have some recognition. Look, and look, the panel, Andrew Whitworth, Will Shields, Orlando Pace, Jason Kelsey. I mean, some of the best guys to ever do it. So having those eyes toward the position can only be impactful. And even if they get it wrong in a given year, I mean, I saw people arguing with who would have won in 2024. Panay Sewell, Lane Johnson was better. I don't know what to say. So I hope that we can get this right.
I cannot wait here for what we do at VSiN. How many times your expertise is called into question and said, Geoff, who do I have to bet for Lineman of the Year this year? Tell me what you think. We
can wager on it too. I forgot. Do you think it'll be offered as a wager?
I believe it will, because most individual awards, right? We got comeback player of the year, obviously offensive rookie, defensive rookies of the year. You've got all these different awards that are out there. If this is entered in now as an official NFL award, I do believe there'll be numbers posted for it. So it'd be very interesting to look at that if that award does populate in the betting market here. But we're going to be picking your brain specifically all year long as the season progresses. People are going to be betting the Vikings. If you're betting the Vikings this year, you're betting on a couple things. One, Kevin O'Connell, quarterback whisperer, gets it right? Sam Darnold last year, 14 wins in the regular season. And I think a lot of that, people looked at that and said, that's KOC getting it right. They let Sam go. He's in the Pacific Northwest. Now it's J.J. McCarthy taking over. And I want you to hear this quote. This comes from the co-owner and president, Mark Wilf, who says he's very impressed by J.J. McCarthy and says, quote, he has a gravitational pull as a leader. He really does. The talent is there. Coach O'Connell is glowing in his praises of how he's handled everything. And from an off-the-field perspective, we couldn't be happier. Geoff, when you hear that, what does he mean by that? You know this from being in a huddle, the gravitational pull that a quarterback has as a leader. What is Wilf getting at here when he talks about J.J. McCarthy?
I think you want these intangibles, right? You want a guy that people and players gravitate towards. And we know that what he did in Michigan, right? Like we know those are he's successful, right? Being a team leader. But in the end, that all sounds great. Can you do the job or not? Like in there, for the most part, I'd argue that most of the quarterbacks who are good in the NFL are good people as well. We agree. They might disagree with some of their political takes at times, but I don't think they're bad people.
Right.
That's like a prerequisite for being a National Football League quarterback, right? So that it sounds good. It's a good guy. We love the intangibles. Can you win football games? How quickly can the staff get him up and ready to play by week one? Look, there's a lot of pressure on them to start fast. We saw what happened last year with Darnold. I think it was the right decision to let Darnold walk, by the way. You drafted McCarthy, you got to play him. Nothing should have changed about your priors on him. So I get what they're saying. It's good to be a good person off the field. Doesn't mean you're going to be good on the field.
And again, we talked about it a little bit with JaVontae Williams of the Cowboys coming back from that reconstruction of the knee. He loses his whole rookie season. I think people have already forgotten that to a knee injury that happened early on last year before we even got to the preseason here, or actually right after the preseason. Is that a concern? That he's not going to, normally you want to say that it's the year after when it's a devastating knee injury, but yet we're going to expect him on the normal years allowed a time to get healthy and then grasp the playbook and then take over for a 14-win team. That feels like a lot to ask for a guy coming off a major surgery like he had last year.
It's a lot. And I think that the part that does worry me is like when young players sit essentially their first season, they sit because they're not good enough, but they still practice. And they still like, he didn't practice last season. He might, maybe when he got healthy at the end of the season, maybe he saw the field. I don't know. I didn't study the Vikings practice reports from the end of January, but he basically just sit out a year. Now, you could use that certainly to mentally prepare yourself, but you got to play ball, right? And again, like I mentioned earlier with Caleb Williams and these guys, like their job this year, I think it's just, I know they want to win a lot of games and they have a bunch of players that, you know, that in their offensive strategy was like win, 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 win. I get all those, but again, I think you want to use this year to evaluate McCarthy and end up at the end of the season thinking he's our guy, right? You want him to be better, obviously, the last quarter of the season, the first quarter of the season. So there's a lot of pressure on him to play well early. I totally get that. It's totally fair based on what happened last season, the roster that they returned. But I would imagine that you feel the same way I do. It feels pretty unknown to start fast.
Yes.
I think he can. But again, too, like he looked good in the preseason last year, whatever, it's a preseason. But what he's being asked to do in Minnesota is different than what he's asked to do in college. And we know that oftentimes that's the case, as we know, as you're drafted based off of your talent and your projection more off of your college production, but it is still different, right? What he's asked to do in the NFL is different. However, he plays in a very quarterback-friendly offense, and he has a lot of weapons. So that really helps him.
Got a great receiving core. He's got a great head coach. So it should be there for JJ to be able to handle it. But I think you're right, Geoff. Until we see it, see what it looks like, and you hope physically, not just mentally, the kid's ready to play here. Year 2 for him, but really in all honesty, it's year 1. Speaking of rookies, Shedeur Sanders may be the highest profile rookie to ever go as late as he did in the NFL draft. Dillon Gabriel actually got drafted ahead of him this year coming out of Oregon. And he says this, Shedeur, about Dillon, quote, everything's been good. He's a cool person. Talking about Dillon, I like how he handles situations, especially just the negative media that's coming his way. I'm just happy he's positive. He's able to handle everything. We're truly cool. How important is that? Because there's 2 rookies, and you can't imagine that they're going to be, it feels like Robert Griffin III and Kirk Cousins. At some point, you knew it was going to come to a head. One guy was going to take the reins maybe a couple of years down the road. It's good that they're getting along, Shedeur and Dillon, but Joe Flacco is not going to play forever, right? And you feel like they want one of these rookies to step up. How good is that competition? And can you be cool with the guy that you're really competing against?
Yeah, you can be cool with them. You can be friendly with them. I don't know why you can't do both. You can be competitive, also friendly. I mean, of course, you want to win the job. I don't know why you can't be cordial with the guy you're competing with. Some guys can't, they're competitors in that way. But I imagine that Sanders and Gabriel look at each other like, hey, man, he's my competition. We can be friendly. We're both rookies. Both go through this together for the first time. We have those shared experiences. But yeah, I want to beat the other guy out. Like it's not, both can be true. So, yeah, I mean, everywhere Dillon Gabriel's been, the guy, look, and think about Shedeur Sanders, by the way, none of his teammates, at least publicly that I know, have said negative things about him. Behind the scenes, possibly, it's certainly fair that behind the scenes people say, as we know, it happens quite often in life. So I'm not surprised that they get along. They're going through this shared experience for the first time together. Look, I was drafted with an offensive lineman in the 7th round as well. We were friends. We were friendly, but we wanted to both make the team. I mean, that's very human nature.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how it plays out because are they going to carry? They're not going to carry 4 quarterbacks. So you got 2 veterans and 2 rookies. I mean, there is a chance that literally one of these guys is not on the roster. I mean, unlikely. It seems like you'd cut a veteran before you'd cut one of your rookies that you drafted and spent draft capital on. But make no mistake about it, as you pointed out, they are vying for that totem pole right now as quarterbacks on this roster. So it's going to be Shedeur. It's going to be Dillon. Let's see which one on the depth chart, if they both make the team. That'll be very interesting to see there. Geoff, great stuff as always, my friend. Cannot wait to break this down as we get closer and closer, I know, to summertime, which means we're getting closer and closer to training camp. Yeah. OTAs are upon us, and we'll get to those camps here in short order. But for Geoff Schwartz, I'm Dave Ross. We'll see you next week right here on the GM Shuffle.